Welcome to the Near Future podcast. Today we have our special guest from Wise, Hollie Lubbock, Design Director, and Josh Payton, VP of Design. Jonny and I have been working closely with both of them over the last recent months, and it's been super fun to see how the design team has evolved and adapted to incorporating AI into how they're operating, how they're working. And so we're excited to dig into that today, a few practical things, and then there might be some spicy opinions on the cards. So we're excited to dig into that. So maybe we could start off with a question for you, Hollie, which is just to bring the listeners or viewers up to speed. What does the day-to-day look like for a typical designer at Wise right now in terms of AI ways of working in design?
Cool. I'm going to say what it looks like right now, which I fully expect to change by tomorrow or like the next day. I think that's probably one of the things to just say that like everything is changing continuously. And as we're learning, we're bringing in more tools. But right now it looks like people jumping between Figma, getting into Claude, working with like specific custom tools they've made themselves. Like in the brand team, they're working with a lot of pieces they've done. I would say probably the thing that we're seeing the most is actually like experimenting in terms of just building something very, very quickly using our design system. So we've got a prototyping kit that's like hooked up, same as many other people. But I think one of the things that's been interesting about it is because we have such complex logic and flows within the actual product itself, it allows us to really quickly actually kind of make variations on that. And that's the sort of thing that's changed rapidly over the last year or so. So for example, like if you were thinking about prototyping sending money, that was a nightmare before we could do it. You'd be like literally manually doing all the sums, updating all the numbers. But now we've kind of got that in. We can switch types of users. So whether it's like business, personal, whether they've got loads of currencies, whether they've only got one, and then we can build on top of that. So each time one of the designers builds on something, it also goes back into the system. So everyone's kind of like building on top of each other and then learning how we go. But yeah, I think it's just got a lot faster to get from idea to something you can play with. And that's like super fun.
Awesome. Hollie, when we first worked with the design team at Wise, it was probably November last year, something like that. And I remember this like early version of this prototyping kit, and it was sort of magical that people suddenly could hold something in their hands and like it felt real, even though it wasn't real. It was sort of a facsimile of the real iOS app in that example. So it's built in the web, but all of the components felt so realistic and lifelike. And then to be able to jump into that and just like tell it to do something different. We had these mad experiments with like Chinese New Year appearing inside the Wise app. And I suppose I'm interested in what the evolution of like people's mindset, because from there to now, it's probably, you know, those people being like, I'm scared to look at the terminal, and now, you know, a lot of them are in it every day. Just that journey, because I think you've done a really good job of bringing people on that journey in quite a structured way. Just interested in hearing you talk about that a bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think it started out, I think we probably all feel this still, like because things are changing so quickly, I'm like, oh God, there's a new thing that I need to learn. But I think at that point in time, we had a few people in the design team that were super far ahead. And then a lot of people who were a little bit like, oh, I've never really opened terminal, I've not done any programming before. So some people like, you know, we remember the days when we were doing flash games and stuff like that. So you had a memory of what it was like, and it was like resurrecting that memory. So I think that was also useful as well to like have that kind of in the team from a few people. But I think the mindset's changed to just like, this is just part of our day-to-day. It's not scary. We've kind of made a lot of effort to make sure that the training was in place for people who were maybe a little bit more hesitant or had less sort of technical background. But also, I think the team is really good at learning from each other. And those kind of workshops and the playing meant that there was a safe space to do it in, but very, very quickly. The point was actually do it in your day-to-day. So I think that's kind of the shift, is that it's one thing to do it as like a play experiment on the side. It's a very different thing to say, actually, I've spotted an opportunity in my day-to-day and I'm going to use it. And I think that's the shift, is that people are spotting those opportunities for themselves and actually pushing what's there and saying, actually, we need to evolve the tool because I need to do something more complicated. So I just think it's not as scary. It's like we're all on the journey together. It's probably what I would say.
Are you finding that people, 'cause it feels like quite a sort of solo mission, AI, like I'm in my own terminal, I'm building this mad experiment. I don't really know how it works, so it's hard for anyone else to pick it up. Are you finding that people are looking for ways to collaborate on this stuff a little bit more rather than it being, you know, solo missions?
So we were talking about this yesterday actually, because I think it's that's the tricky bit, is that you can go further and faster on your own very, very quickly, but then you're just in your own bubble and you have no actual external inputs, and you end up with you're the only judge of what's good because you're just working with yourself. So actually what we've seen is people actually just sitting next to each other and working on it together, or putting stuff on GitHub, pulling it down, doing an iteration, and trying to learn those workflows as well. So it's not just learning the tools, it's actually learning a different way to collaborate, which I think is something that we could definitely keep working on and make the tool sets better for. But yeah, there is this slight tendency to go down into a hole and be a lone wolf. So it's I think with crits and things, it's about pulling people back, or just saying share it really rough and early, just do the video and then polish it before you get too tied in. Because it can look really finished and really high quality when actually the thinking isn't there because you haven't stress tested the thinking.
Yeah, I think too, there's a natural workflow progression that you kind of go through as you start to adopt these tools, is that you start to end up in this agent operator relationship, and then you start to realize the operator is the slowest thing, and that's you. And so the agents are they're outpacing you 3-1, and then suddenly you're like, you know what, I could really use another operator, and you're like, oh wait. I have them. They're all sitting around me. Okay, now what do I need to do? And so you suddenly have to figure out how to open the door, and that's where the boring operations stuff I think starts to come in, and how do you integrate other people into the workflow. Yeah, I think that gets interesting pretty quick.
Yeah, and it does feel like the narrative around all of these amazing AI gains for engineering and now for design have been driven by what feels like people in small teams are working on their own, where they don't have those other operators, and they don't have there's very little existing institutional knowledge or architecture to worry about. They're just greenfielding their way through some stuff. And why is it safe to say with 8,000 employees and an enormous public company, there's probably a little bit more to lose there. So suddenly the slowing ourselves down and having a judge moment, it sounds obvious to say, but I think it's really easy to sort of forget the practicalities of using this stuff in a big team, and it still needs to fit with all the rest of how the team needs to work and collaborate. So
I'm curious about the range of designers that you're seeing. Are all designers at this point using these tools in some capacity, or are there some that are still pushing the ceiling of what's possible? And how does that distribute across the different disciplines at Wise?
Hollie, you want to take this one?
I can take it, and I think you build on it. I think how it manifests is slightly different in different disciplines. So in product design, there's a lot of prototyping going on, building your own tools for things as well. In the brand design teams, it's much more around the exploration, building things much faster than we could have done on our own, or much more complex than we could have done. And there are people there really, really pushing that side of things and getting into hooking up motion with sound, with generative visuals, and really making tools that are pretty complex that would have taken years and years of training to learn how to use, or even you would never have built it yourself in the first place. I think in our content design disciplines, there's obviously a set of tools that people are building for themselves, but there's also there's AI workflows and things actually built into the Wise product. I think that's maybe a slightly different angle as well. So people are not only designing their own tools and prototyping, we're actually building AI experiences, particularly in things like the customer service area. So there's a lot of innovation going on there on how do you actually do that type of work in content design particularly.
Yeah, and then I think too the bit that I think several people here I don't think are really aware of yet, but it's coming quickly, is Jonny, our head of design operations. He's one of the most advanced folks in terms of building prototypes and stuff like that. And he's been looking at just how do we automate a ton of the toil that goes into our broader workflows and stuff like that. I've seen some of really impressive stuff coming out of him, and his biggest gate right now is just OPSEC or InfoSec, and trying to basically navigate through what kind, not having data leaks, into the systems and stuff like that. But I think that's where that's kind of the stuff that I'm really excited about, is as I was talking about the operator slowdown thing and having to basically integrate across. That's kind of where I think a lot of really interesting stuff is starting to happen right now. And it's a little bit of behind the curtain kind of stuff, because it's easy to look at a prototype that's right in front of you, but then there's a whole operational workflow and some of the drudgery that I think all designers hate of
Yeah.
resource utilization and like all that kind of stuff. Like suddenly that you can start to strip that away and it starts to happen automatically, which is super cool. Yeah. So like I think everybody like innovation's happening across the board, kind of in every discipline. It's just it comes forward in a little bit of a different flavor every time. And I think underneath all of it is like training, right? So like the content designers in particular, I think they're really, really advanced in terms of like building their own agents, building workflows, like how to like prompt effectively and all that kind of stuff. And more they're getting leaned on to help like other teams and other disciplines who are like less sort of on the tools constantly to be more effective in their implementation of this stuff as well.
Yeah, one thing I've been thinking about quite a lot is how you enable the designers and the content designers and actually, the people, the arbiters of what good looks like as it hits the customer, to enable people outside their part of the organization to do better work. So whether that's like, emails that always look on brand written by the marketing team, or whether that's like copy that is in some corner of the app or the product experience. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, Josh?
Yeah, to an extent. I think more and more as we get more familiar with like how these tools work and what they're capable of, I think we're starting to see just like special like subject matter experts are still subject matter experts, and like just because I can now go into terminal and like have Claude Code generate like front end code that works, an engineer doing that is still going to be way faster and more effective than me at doing that, and like as a designer I'm still going to be way faster than like anybody else trying to do design work with a tool, because it's like it raises the floor for everybody, so it's like I'm now way faster to think I'm already good at. So like I've got 25 years of experience doing this. Like somebody who picks it up today is not going to be faster or more effective than me at the same thing when I have the exact same tool. So I think what it starts to get into is like, how do you enable other subject matter experts around you to move as fast and to like improve their own effectiveness? Yeah. So that's like, I think that's kind of like my underlying kind of thesis on all of this is like, everybody can like lone wolf their way through stuff, but you end up hitting a productivity wall anyway. It's just like you get there faster and you're like, your productivity might be slightly higher. But at the same time, like the number of times I've been working on something on my own and been like, I really wish I had an engineer sitting next to me because I don't know what mistakes I'm making. It's like, I think like if everyone was that self-aware, I think you'd come to that conclusion a lot sooner.
Yeah. In the last episode, we were talking to Domingos from Finn Intercom, who is operating in this like probably a similar role to Jonny in the way. And it's like a sort of design / engineering opsy role that just facilitates others. Any reflections on how you would structure an organization to, like, does every org need a Jonny at some point that is then just and a Guso and other people that we know are just like exceptional at wise at this kind of stuff?
Yeah. Just so for anybody listening, Guso is like our head of design tooling. He's the wizard of making things work in the background. I've been a big pusher for like ops since day one. Like when I was working agency side, project managers were the bane of my existence. And then over time I was like, wait a minute. These are the designated responsible people. They're actually very useful. And so, like program management, project management, all that kind of stuff. Like it's as soon as you get to a team of more than 5 people, like just managing, coordination between folks becomes a full-time job for somebody. And like, yes, some of that like can be handed off to, agents and stuff. But even still, like, having somebody around who's thinking that stuff through and like thinking a few steps ahead and, making sure that like all of us abstract random design people who like our whole stock and trade is being disorganized and sort of a little bit flitty, are like still on task. Like I think there's a big role for that still. And like I said, like Jonny, the way that he's thinking about like AI implementation on the operations side, like his thinking is way more sophisticated than mine is like on it. I can do some of what he does. I know what good looks like. He knows how to make good actually good.
Yeah. One last one from me and then we'll move on. Just that last thing that you spoke about, Josh, and I think we've spoken to other people who are leaders within design organizations who aren't necessarily hands-on with the tools all the time. Actually, the role is much more, strategic and like people management and stuff like that. How are you both finding that you're able to or not able to keep up with, like getting the feel for how good these tools are? How important is that for you to stay on top of versus just trust the team to work that out and guide them?
I don't hire professional managers. Like period. Like the tool's been changing since day one. When I first started working in the design industry, I was making Flash stuff. It's a completely useless skill now. like staying on the tools is like rule number one of like being an effective design leader in general. If you're like, people come to me all the time when I'm hiring for leadership roles, like, oh, I haven't touched Figma in 10 years. I'm like, cool, you're not in this process anymore. Like, good luck with that. If you know what I mean? Like, I just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Like, I'm like, in my day-to-day job, like a lot of it is going to meetings and like dealing with, administrative staff. I go home and I do design work. Like, it's a practice. You know what I mean? It's called practice for a reason. And it's the same thing as like you practice medicine, you practice law, you practice design. Like, it's the same thing.
We'll definitely clip that, Josh. That was in the
That was. Oh, I don't know how I'm going to say it after that revelation from Josh. I think for me, I'm looking for like that one project that I get involved with and that I play with the new tools on. Always. There's always something where I'm like, okay, this is the one for me to try that out on. There's a bit of space. I can do that, to just always make sure I've got my hand in and learning the new things. Because it's like, I want to be able to help people if they get stuck and actually be able to give advice and support. If I don't know what the thing is, I can't do that.
100%.
Absolutely. Based on the conversation around leadership and the role leaders play, I think there's an interesting question at the moment around seniority levels. A lot of companies are just hiring the most senior ICs they can find at a scale of the Wise design team, which is how many people now? 120, 130-ish? 150. Okay. I imagine the strategy of only hiring super senior people all the time is not necessarily sustainable, or maybe it is. I'm curious how you're thinking about sort of talent development and people earlier in their career. How are you trying to hire those people? Are there sort of specific shapes of those people that you're looking for in the team?
Yeah, we have a grads program, we have an internship program, and we have an apprenticeship program. And then we have like a whole partnership with like DNAD and a few others, like DNAD New Blood and a bunch of like early career stuff. In my experience, like since I was working at Huge in New York in like 2010, like the realization back then was like, there's not a lot of people who have a lot of experience with large scale platform builds, so we're going to need to train these people ourselves. Like that was the thesis in 2010. Today, it's the exact same thing. We're seeing like, oh, we want super ICs. It's like, okay, well, where's the pipeline for growing talent? So like, and I've always thought that traditional internships are not that useful. It's like hiring a person that like comes in and works voluntarily so that they can like, buy paper for the copier is like not a very valuable kind of work experience. So like we have taken the tack of like actively training people, putting them on real projects, and like it both gives people that are like earlier in their career that are already in the company an opportunity to get like some experience with management. So it's training those folks, and then it's bringing in like a bunch of young talent and then training them on like tools and stuff for what we're doing here every day. And like there's a couple folks that are like at Wise right now who were part of like the early careers program at Huge in New York 15 years ago, who are now design leaders at Wise. The design world is very small, and so like build your tribe, and like the tribe travels together. The brand on the marquee might change, but like the faces remain the same. Hollie and I have known each other for 10 years. You know what I mean? We haven't always worked together, but yeah.
Amazing.
I also can attest to this. After our last workshop with you guys, I sat down for lunch next to Melissa, who up until a year ago, was a circus performer and then did a boot camp and then ended up as a Wise intern or junior and was brilliant in the workshop, like built something extremely cool. But just, it felt very refreshing to hear that, you're looking for people, looking for raw talent, not necessarily just your 5 years of design experience or whatever it is, unusual CVs, and just people that just, I suppose, sparkle. But
I mean, the three most valuable skills I think for anybody at any level is like smart, ambitious, and curious. Like as long as you got those three things going for you, like you'll go far. Like we work in an industry where like everything's always changing. So like if that's at the base of like what, like how you operate and like how you get down, like I think you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Amazing. Should we switch gears, Jonny, and talk about some thoughts, Josh, that you shared with us ahead of this conversation? You shared a few, a few ideas about working with AI and what your experience has been so far. I think the first one that seems like a natural progression from this conversation is around disciplines not collapsing. Could you tell us a bit more about that? Like you've already spoken to it a little bit, but I'd love to go a bit deeper.
Yeah, I don't buy it. Like everybody, I think the people who are saying this have an ego problem, to be honest. Like, I think like there's a big Dunning-Kruger problem happening in the industry right now. Like, oh, I can do everything myself. Like, okay, good luck, like have fun. It's like, I mean, it's a bet, but I don't buy it. Like, I hang out with a lot of very smart engineers all day long, and like I'm never going to be as good of an engineer as they are, and likewise, there's all these people who are like saying like, oh, like literally internally every now and then you'll hear people be like, oh, we're going to fire all the designers. I'm like, I've handed you PowerPoint and like Google Slide templates for the last 4 years, and you still like bodged them horribly. Do you think that like what you're doing with AI is going to be any better? Like, no, it's not. I actually think that the need for specialization is going to increase, not decrease, like over time. You know what I mean? Like differentiation is more important now than ever. It used to be hard to be average. It's like that is table stakes now. And I posted on LinkedIn like a while ago, like AI raises the floor for everybody. It does not raise the ceiling. And there's a bunch of people hanging around in a finished basement all of a sudden thinking they're on the roof. And it's like, no, man, you're not. Like you are barely average. And like I said, it's like, I am capable of way more than I used to be at the thing I'm already good at. And like the engineer I'm sitting next to is now a wizard, and I have no idea what they're capable of. Like I would be so like presumptuous to assume that like I can like beat the engineer at the engineering game the same way like I think like anybody is presumptuous to assume they can beat the designers of the design game. And likewise, like it's the same for product, the same for legal, the same for all this kind of stuff. I think Kari Saarinen, the CEO of Linear, like he posted a thing a while ago where he was like, AI is great for things when you don't care very much about the outcome. And his thing was like, he's like, I go into it and I ask for legal advice, and he gives me legal advice. I'm like, oh, this sounds pretty passable. Then I ask an actual legal expert, and they're like, dude, do not do that. I think, it's like, it's just, yeah, it's a tool change at the end of the day, and it's also an averaging machine. So like if your goal is to be average, congratulations, you have arrived.
I suppose I think you are also showing the bar at Wise there in your answer. And I suppose the slightly more cynical take on this would be there are probably, well, by definitionally 50% of companies are average or below. And maybe if you're in one of those companies, the CEO might say, well, we don't need any designers because the engineers can do it. And then they end up with average or below average design, and they're happy with it because that is the nature of the business.
To be fair, they're already doing that. Like you can look around and see companies. It's like, that don't have very good, like their apps are bad, their products are average, their like websites look like crap. Like it's already a thing.
Yeah. For what it's worth, I agree with you, and I think Kari Saarinen is a really good voice in this. Actually, a voice of reason amidst all the hype, and a good follow, I would say. So I just got a follow up to this, Josh, which is, and actually Hollie as well, really interested in your thoughts on what you think this will do to reshape our discipline. Do you think that there will be any specialisms within design, for example, that appear, that become important, some new archetypes, or not?
I think it's really hard to like pinpoint it. I do think, like Josh was talking about earlier, in that operationalizing side of things, I do think that's been massively amplified, and the need for it is much, much clearer. So I can see that being an area that actually kind of expands, or people specialize in, that are very good at enabling many. I think it's always changing. I think that's been the constant with design, is like the tools change every couple of years. You need to learn a new thing. There's some like new way of thinking or some new trend that's on board. And like, I think we probably all remember when we were all just called web designers, UX, UI, product designers. And now and like service designers. Like how many iterations have we already been through? And
Ollie, we're all design engineers now. We're design engineers.
I know.
Commercial artists. It's webmaster.
Webmaster.
Exactly. I think that's my point, is that it's always been changing, and like the skill sets widen and contract every now and again. I think those baseline skills, I don't believe they change. I think it's like high bar in terms of like decision making and knowing what good looks like in terms of a craft quality and pushing it. That's always been the constant, no matter what sort of design you're doing.
Yeah, I think too, like the way things start to reshape, I think that you're going to see a similar pattern to what happened like when design systems really started to take hold and become commonplace, is that like a lot of the low level toil that like people had to like spend lots of time on is now going to become like very easy to just either automate or to hand over to other folks. And I actually sat down and I made a 2x2 because like I got asked by like our chief product officer a while ago, like, can you talk to me about like when should PMs just like skip to prototyping and like cut design out, and like when should like design really like come to bear in full. And so I put together like a 2x2, and the axes are, the 4 quadrants are like, is it an established pattern or is it 0 to 1? And then on the other axis, it's like, is this a well-structured problem or is it an ill-structured problem? And in those quadrants, in the upper left-hand corner, you have, it's well-structured and it's an established pattern. So like, this is like a place where it's like, it's easy for PMs, engineers, legal people, whoever to like opt to prototype freely, because it's like, you have a single falsifiable hypothesis. The changes are easily reversible. It's things like, you can think about it like is the checkout flow, right? It's like going from step A to step B. If you make one minor change, like the difference is going to be 0 or 1. Like it's either going to win or it's going to lose, and you can like iterate really, really fast. It's using the design system. Like, I don't need to touch that. Like go right ahead, knock yourself out. That's no big deal. On the other end of the spectrum, though, you have like, it's a 0 to 1 problem, and the solution is very ill structured. So it means that like, it's the difference. Like if you use the Roy Sutherland example, it's like Tesco Express versus the farmer's market. Both are very successful like ways to buy food. However, like they're completely polar opposite in terms of the way they work. And so that's where like it's better to like write a PRD, like get, start exercising some design thinking, start with sketching at that point. Like you really have to work through strategy, scope, structure, skeleton, surface, like that whole deal. And the other 2 quadrants, you have something that's like a 0 to 1 problem that's in a well-structured environment. I'd say in this place, it's like, it's important to use caution, because like it's usually faster for design to do it. But if the criteria exist and the path to get there is like relatively certain, like you kind of don't necessarily need to get involved, but there's a little bit of risk in that. And then there's the other one where it's like it's a established pattern, but like it's an ill-structured solution set. So the way that I like explain this sometimes at Wise is like logged out web. Like the website is a very well-established pattern, but like what you actually put there, like headline writing, images you pick, the narrative of things, it's an ill-structured problem. There's a zillion ways to skin that cat. Like it's probably better to have designers involved, unless you're making like really like low level A/B kind of, we're updating the comparison table or something. Like so it's like some of these are like, it creates a judgment call, like who's best suited to tackle it. But that's kind of the way I've been thinking about this in terms of like what tasks you can hand over to other disciplines, because like it makes the path to like table stakes easier. But then like it's just kind of like proceed with your eyes open, because like I think a lot of times when you have folks that are like incentivized to move quickly and just experiment and test and learn, like they innovate by copying basically, and that just leads to like you get some instant gratification, but over time you start to plateau and then decline if that's the only way you do everything. So yeah, I think there's like, it's just being very self-aware in terms of like what you're doing and why you're doing it, and then what the sort of cost benefit is at the end of it.
I love that, Josh, and that 2x2 makes a ton of sense. I'm curious, in my experience, the agreement on what structure is actually complex or not complex feels like it can differ based on the discipline or the person responsible for allocating people to a problem. Have you found that to be true here, or have you found it everyone pretty much agrees fairly easily on what is complicated and what is not complicated?
That's why they call it work and not fun. Yeah. It's working that out. Like that's kind of the whole game right there, I guess. Yeah. So the answer is no. I don't think everybody agrees. I think like if an engineer looks at an engineering problem, they're like, this is easy. You show that to somebody in like, facilities.
Yeah.
Like it's all Latin to me. So who knows?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I kind of was curious if there was any sort of AI eval process you have going under the hood that helps different disciplines speak to each other in their own language, or their sort of alignment around, is this actually a serious problem from all these angles? Anyway, we can move on.
Something to build, though. I'll tell
Maybe.
John to go build that.
Yeah, Johnny can get on that. Maybe switching gears slightly, Josh, a few times you've mentioned now about AI being an averaging machine.
Yeah.
And the importance of differentiation that comes as a result of that. Would love to hear your thoughts on how you see differentiation playing out in the next few years in terms of what the implications could be for brands or product experiences or other things people will can expect in their lives as a result of this
Yeah,
focus
I mean,
on differentiation.
this has the opportunity to be a sprawling answer, but like at the end of the day, like I think like the thing with AI is like it's garbage in, garbage out, right? Like if you give it bad parameters, like you get bad results. And so like that's, I think, when I say it's an averaging machine, and this is like pretty well established, I feel like at this point, like there's been all these tropes you see in sort of the press about, you know, you ask Claude for a design and it's going to come back purple. You know, it's like there's just or like if you ask it to write something, it's going to use the word genuinely like 400 times. Somebody at Anthropic uses the word genuinely a lot because someone's trained the model to say that over and over and over again. And so like I think there's a lot of that kind of stuff where it's like the tells become a lot more obvious the longer the things go on. And it's like if you look back at like the 90s when CGI started to become a thing in movies, it was like, wow, this is amazing. And then you go back and watch it now, you're like, oh my God, this looks like crap. Like the same thing's going to happen with AI. You know, it's just like as things go on, people get more savvy about being able to figure out like where people are cutting corners. Yeah, and so I think that's like that's where the differentiation thing I think really comes in is that like there's also like a big backlash right now. I feel like against AI. You talk to people and they're like there seems to be like this strong desire for like human curated experiences and things that are real and like, you know, and that sort of thing. And I don't think this is exactly like germane to your question, but like my hypothesis expectation is that things like live entertainment are going to like have like a golden era coming up because you know, as things in digital media start to become less believable and like less true and just like filled with more schlock, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to go hang out with my friends then. It's like, oh, I'm going to go see a band live then. Or I'm going to go like to the theater, or, you know, it's like I'm literally going to see Oh Mary, you know, it's like these types, it's like this stuff's actually fulfilling. Like I sit on TikTok and I realize like I'm watching a bunch of like people that don't exist talking about things that don't exist. And it's all just there to like make me outrage and like increase engagement. Like it's like I feel people are gonna start to opt out. You know, if you thought that SEO content was bad, just wait. Like that's like our future is just this pipe of garbage like into the world to try to like dupe rubes into like clicking more things and looking at more ads. It's like I don't know. I actually don't really think that AI is gonna take over the world. I think like there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to like end up in like the fat people in Wall-E, you know, like just on a conveyor belt of consumerism, you know, and then there's going to be folks that don't want to do that. And I'd like to think I'm going to be in the second category. Yeah.
And this sounds like quite an optimistic sort of future vision. I love that we got from that question, which was maybe a little bit more tactical, to the existential, but it was inevitable. We get there at some point. The Wall-E does seem to be the bit of sci-fi that most predicts the future in my mind as well. But in a world where we have enough and more time and all of that kind of thing, and we're all able to see each other a little bit more, does that then have an implication for what we do? Like, are we going to go back and, you know, hand set posters with glue and paper and because that is actually what people end up valuing? I mean, I'm not actually averse to that. That sounds really fun.
Maybe.
But, you know, as I can't work out if it's an optimistic or a pessimistic view of this, because it's kind of pessimistic for like what we've trained to do over the last at least 10 years, while being optimistic for a life that we might want to lead. That sounds better.
Yeah, get someone on Etsy on here and ask them how their sales are doing. You know, like is the market for handcrafted things made with care like increasing or decreasing? I don't actually know the answer to that question.
I thought you had some insider knowledge. Okay.
The pessimistic takes are easy. Like I you know, like I think it's better to just look at the upside. I've never been more like enthusiastic and like excited about the work I'm doing, like particularly like the side stuff I'm working on. Like it's like, oh my God, this is like, it's suddenly so much easier for me to make stuff that I care about, like digitally. Whether I make money off it or not is like kind of beside the point. Like making stuff is like the reason I got into this job in the first place. And whether it's like building physical things or like building apps and websites or like whatever the case, or like making music, like that's the creative outlet. And now it's just like you can make things much more real, much more quickly. Like I heard somebody recently describe this as self-ware, you know, like making software for yourself that like does things you want it to do. Yeah, man, that's awesome. Like whether Anthropic has a business model or not, like I don't care. You know, like, that's for them to figure out, you know.
Amazing. Josh, could you give us some examples of some of the things you've built recently? We'd love to hear what you're tinkering with?
It's top secret.
Okay.
That's classified. No, I'm building an app right now. I told myself 2 weeks ago it'd be out in 2 weeks.
Classic.
But
One
yeah,
more feature.
I've totally fit the bill of like, AI has made me so much more efficient and productive, and I've never been busier than ever. It's like, it's just like, you can accomplish so much. But yeah, I got an app in the works. I'm gonna release it probably soonish, like within the next month, I would say, and then you'll see. But I gotta keep the secrets under wraps because it'll ruin my launch.
Can I just ask Josh, like, what for this personal project, what is your design process?
So, good question. Where do you want me to start? Like, so when I started this whole industry, like in the industry, I was a graphic designer who knew how to code. Like that's like how I got into like interaction design, because somewhere in the middle was like UX. So like I've known how to like write HTML, CSS, JavaScript, Swift, like Dart, like all that kind of stuff for a long time. So I've had like tinkery, like Flutter projects going on for a really long time. Where AI really started to help was it like I could ask it a bunch of questions about solutions architecture and how you can actually structure like a database and like how you connect all these things. So that's where I started, was like, oh, I want to like actually integrate real data. Like I don't want to pay Google for search. So like I need to like download Overture and like kind of stuff like this. Is started to like allude to what I'm like actually working on. Oh, Hollie knows. She's one of my test users. So I started there, and then basically I designed everything in Figma. And then the thing I've realized too is like documentation as code is a huge thing. So like if you like, it's all just markdown files really to like that make AI work. So like it's not that inaccessible for kind of anybody to do that. So I started to get into that, like, oh, I understand how to build skills now. I know how to make like sub agents, and like this was a while ago. And then I realized like, oh, like having a tidy Figma file is like more important than ever. Tokenizing everything, like down to like corner radii and like all like as detailed as possible, because that's the thing that like makes the AI like actually do pixel perfect stuff. Design is still the slowest and hardest part. Like that's the other thing that I realized, is that like actually getting something good and consistent to come out of AI, so that screens across like a large thing that's not just like some vibe coded garbage thing, like is actually still very, very slow and tedious. And this is where I'm saying like the operator lane is the slowest lane, because it's like all that kind of works. So yeah, now like I've got a backlog in Linear, everything's on Git, and then I run like between 4 and 7 Claude Code sessions next to each other, and then I have Cowork running like the strategy like side of it. So like I'm planning things ahead in the future, doing like cost breakdowns and like competitive analysis and like all that kind of stuff, cost modeling. Like I use Claude Code for all that. Claude Code then like feeds the backlog with like ADRs and like all that kind of stuff. And then I have like a whole like fleet of agents that do everything from like solutions architecture, like wiring check, so like checks that all the like wiring across things work, integration checking, backlog grooming. I have a project manager one, and then basically it's just a loop that keeps going around and around and around and around like that. I took a screenshot of it. It was like I was like, oh man, my workflow is very different than it used to be. And so like, now it's like I use Obsidian to manage MD files locally, just because it like formats things nicely. And then a bunch of Claude Code sessions running simultaneously, Cowork for like future stuff. A simulator is running all the time, and then Figma. Like that's basically it, I think. Yeah.
And you started. Oh, this sounds like maybe a little bit in the weeds, but I just think what I've found from building sort of toy projects myself, and not this is a toy project, Josh. I'm sure it's going to take over the world, but
it is.
But when it's in the early phases and it's just you and you can do whatever you want. Open Figma, hard thinking, doesn't work for ages until it suddenly does. Basically the design process that you described versus I'll just ask Claude to like build one more feature, and you get that dopamine hit fairly immediately, and it works, which feels like magic and all of that kind of stuff. And I've found myself, and I'm sure a lot of people do this, designers being like, just one more thing, and then I'm going to do a bit of design stuff to tighten it all up, but actually just one more feature. But it sounds like you started with like a more traditional design process to sort of lay the foundations, and then now you've got a good foundation you can run quite quickly at the build side.
Yeah, and like I've tried to run them in parallel. The thing that's been interesting is it's like taught me a lot about like, I guess I've had like a lot of aha moments about like process and like where design sits in the process and like how to think about engineering, and the cost benefit of like paying a little bit of extra like debt, I guess, now to make things like systemic and like extensible and like scalable, rather than just like building a thing that you have to like refactor later. And it's like these all become deliberate product choices, and I start to realize like why like there's like the product management design tension constantly of like don't over optimize too early, but then also like be very judicious about like not making stupid decisions that are going to take you a million years to refactor. And I just posted something on LinkedIn the other day, like the two most valuable words I've learned is bounded validity. It's like, which basically means like every claim is valid within bounds, and unstated bounds are then interpreted as infinite. So if it's like test ran green, like if you're chaining agents together, right? Test ran green.
Yeah.
It's like, great. Every agent that reads that from then on is be like, okay, I can just do whatever. And then like weeks later, you're going to realize that test ran green against the parameters that thing tested against. It didn't test all these other things. And if it never says, I tested these 3 things, not these other 7 things, the other 7 things just get that green on their own. Or if it's like, the other one is, it's like, if there's a Boolean in the system and it's like, this is either true or false, and then the AI goes and checks it and then gets a null, gets a 404.
Yeah.
That is then recorded as false, which is I don't know, gets recorded as false. And then you don't realize that was a problem until like way down the line. And I'm like, oh, these are engineering problems. This is like engineering first principles. Like, I'm a dope. Like, I don't have any idea. And so these are the things where I'm like, oh, right. Like, specializations aren't going away, man. Like, if you don't know this stuff already, like, these are like, I'm not talking about like sophisticated principles here. I'm talking about the foundations of like computer science. And I don't know anything about it. I'm a designer. I went to art school. And so this is why I'm saying, like, I wish I had an engineer sitting next to me, because I'm making some really dumb decisions. And then like the same is true. Like, if you don't know about like Figma tokens, and you don't know about token libraries, and you don't know about like all these things, like, you're just gonna, like, as like the scope of things expands, like, you're just building a larger garbage dump. You know, it's like, so I don't know. Like, the more things change, the more I realize they kind of stay the same. Just like, it's a new flavor.
It's safe to assume that if the good designers are looking at the trash design being put out by people saying design is cooked, you know, that is true for every vertical. So everyone is looking at everyone else and being like, no, we're okay, actually. To an extent, I think.
Yeah, the best people aren't posted on LinkedIn, man. Like,
hey, well, look, you and me and Tom have all posted on LinkedIn this week.
I know. You have. I mean, it comes with the territory, but yeah. Tread carefully. Just because people are posting on LinkedIn doesn't mean they know what they're talking about.
Exactly. Right.
That's very true.
Let's switch to a quick fire round. Tom, do you want to?
Yeah, we just have a few quick fire questions at the end. So hopefully these are short questions, short-ish answers. I will go first, and then Jonny, let's go back and forth. So my question, when an AGI takes over everything, what will you do with all your free time? Hollie.
Free time, I'm definitely going to be making more stuff, like doing it with my hands, drawing more. I'm super into the idea of doing more watercolors at the moment.
Same. Ditto.
Love it. Very cool. And watercolors for you, Josh, or a different flavor of making?
Music.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
All the things.
All of them.
all the cliches.
Creative enterprises.
Yeah. Okay. And open to either. What's one thing about your craft that you refuse to hand over to AI? I think we've covered this fairly well, but a quick answer.
For me, I think it's curation. I think most of design is curation in one way or another. Like, people talk about taste, but like, I think that's a little bit of like I think that's a cop out. I think like the curation is like the core of it, really. So I think it's probably that.
Hollie?
For me, it's curation, but from a slightly different angle. It's that thing of like being able to bring in references from the whole world and like use all of the things around you as like references. I love that. I love learning about a new thing or like gathering things. So I'm not letting it do that for me.
Yeah, I don't think it can either, though. Like, the deep cuts are like where things are really interesting, and you know, like I don't know if anybody knows who Bauer is, like the DJ. He's got his TikTok's great. He does these like crate digging, like he does these like sample breakdowns of old songs, and like, it's cool, man. Like, these like super esoteric like references that people are pulling from to make these like really killer tracks. Like, that stuff's all that's where like magic comes from, you know. Like,
and as you say, we may get more of that now because people are forced to do it to differentiate. Yeah, you can't just sort of sit on your laurels.
Yeah.
Tom, you go.
Last one from me. What's the last tool you deleted from your stack and why?
Hollie.
feel like I'm really bad at deleting stuff. I'll just like keep things lurking around, then I'll open it up and be like, ooh, treasure from ages ago.
Yeah, I don't have it. I think the only one is like probably Illustrator. Like,
Yeah.
if I think about it, like I find myself reaching back for old tools all the time. Like, and then I opened Illustrator like probably a year and a half ago, and I was like, oh my god, yeah, I haven't been. It's like, hello, old friend, I haven't seen you in a while.
Exactly. And then
All
you're
the key
like,
commands
oh.
were still there. I was like, oh, I'm still a whiz at this. But yeah, I think that's the one that, like, I think Figma has truly deleted. I mean, yeah, Sketch too. Like, it's completely gone.
It's amazing how bad the Adobe Suite feels now as well to use. It's like nothing is native. It just feels sort of slow.
Yeah.
I grew up on that stuff. Quark Express. That was my first.
I'm still bitter about Macromedia Freehand, man. Like, myself with that one.
And the last quick fire question is sort of the opposite, in the sense that I'm interested in what is inspiring you at the moment.
Teenage engineering. So sick.
Nice.
Everything they do is amazing. Like, look at their website, it's killer. All their hardware is rad. Like, all the interfaces on their hardware is rad. Like, super cool stuff, man. They're killing the game.
Hollie?
I think I'm really into some of the stuff that's coming out in terms of like video art and how much people are pushing that, and it just getting like super weird and super surreal of this, like, but you know that it's been made by a person.
Okay, well, we may have to ask for some links for the show notes if there's one that you're thinking of there. I think we should wrap up. This is awesome. Where are your personal links on the internet, Hollie and Josh? Where do we find you?
If you'd like to share them, that is. You don't need to.
If you'd like to share them.
Just Google me.
Yeah, kind of the same. I'm like,
Yeah, I SEO optimized myself like 10 years ago. I think it still works. I don't know, maybe. Just Google me.
Okay.
I'm easy to find.
Nice. And Josh, presumably we'll get the announcement of the wait list for your upcoming app somewhere online.
Yeah. There'll be no wait list because I don't expect it to take off or do anything. But yeah, like I'll send you a link when it's ready. This is not some world-beating like innovation thing. It's just like a fun thing I've been working on the side.
We should all have one of those, I feel.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Best way to learn.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, and best of luck with the AI journey ongoing and general design journey. And you're doing amazing things at Wise. So we'll chat to you again later.
Cheers. Thanks, y'all.